to tell you, look, I don't like to do anything that's too mainstream, and I don't like to do things that all the other hosts are doing. And I know Dominic touched upon this. I know Anthony Weiner touched upon this. I know Curtis touched upon it. But I've been seething since I first saw this story on Saturday. And then when I saw Sunday the placement that it was being given in the newspaper, I find this absolutely outrageous. Cover a couple of things here. And then I want to invite people who may have a different view because, look, I'm a lover of history. And sometimes people always ask me, oh, how do you think Donald Trump is going to be viewed by history? How do you think Barack Obama is going to be viewed by history? How do you think George W. Bush is going to be viewed by history? And for every recent president, my answer is always the same. I don't think you can really give a proper evaluation of someone's presidency or someone's mayoralty or somebody's tenure as the governor unless they've been out of office 20 to 30 years. Because if they've been in office any more recently than that, then you can't help but analyze their legacy through the prism of current events rather than through a broader historical perspective. So I recognize the value in going back and looking at the leadership of our past leaders. That being said, this front page story in the New York Times, which it got more coverage than the war in Ukraine did yesterday, all about Ed Koch's secret life, the secrets Ed Koch carried. That's the headline. Then it goes and says, friends open up about the private strain of the former mayor's life as a gay man. Now, I played for you this the other day when we were talking about the controversy over renaming the Ed Koch Bridge. This was an interview that Ed Koch did with the New York Times in anticipation of his obituary, in which he talked about his sexuality.
Let me talk to you about this.
Yeah.
My reaction was to say it's none of your business. And people who voted for me, some of them thought and think I'm gay. Some of them think I'm not, and most of them don't care.
Now, I think Ed Koch really said it all there. And to me, that should have been period, end of sentence. Ed Koch made a decision not to, if he was gay, and look, I'll go along with these so-called friends of his that are outing him 10 years after he's dead. I'll let's say for the sake of this discussion that he was gay. He made a decision not to say that. Now, what possible value is there 32 years after this guy has held any office of the public trust, 10 years after this guy is dead, to all of a sudden say, oh, you know what? He was really gay. What is the news value here? I don't think there is. Now, I read the New York Times knew they were going to get some heat for this. So they wrote a column all about why they wrote the story. And the deputy managing editor, Carolyn Ryan, says that Koch's dual lives are especially resonant at this moment as we watch openly gay politicians rise on the city and national stage, and gay rights once again become the center of major national debates. Let me explain to you something. Ed Koch did not have dual lives. Ed Koch had one life. Because he didn't choose to share every single aspect of his life and his private life with you, the public, or with the press, that doesn't give you a license to try and expose him and try and expose something that he worked hard for the better part of a half century to keep secret. I really find this absolutely shameful. Absolutely shameful. 800-848-9222. Agree, disagree. Do you think the New York Times was right to run this piece? And there's some good quotes in this piece from Ed Koch's sister and from others. And really, the quote from his sister, I think, says it all. And really, it says more about why they should not have run this story in the manner that it did. So his sister, who's now 90 years old, basically says that Ed Koch never asked her about her sexuality, and so she never asked him. So this is what she says. In an interview with Pat Koch-Thaler, she said that while the two did not discuss his sexuality, the family would have been supportive no matter what. He didn't ask me about whether I was gay or straight or bi, and I never asked him and what he was either. It wouldn't have mattered one way or the other. Why does it matter? To the point of needing 5 full pages in one of the most widely read newspapers in the country, on a Sunday edition of it, no less. I recognize that a lot of Koch's opponents are now trying to make an issue of his failure to handle the AIDS crisis. Let's say they're right. Let's say Ed Koch did do a poor job handling the AIDS crisis. Then that should be the story. Ed Koch's legacy in handling the AIDS crisis. It shouldn't be that Ed Koch did a bad job handling the AIDS crisis because he was gay. He should be judged by the same principles, the same barometer, the same values that the rest of us are, no matter what your sexuality is. I really find this so reprehensible, honestly, especially for an editorial page which has no problem talking about a right to privacy and this and that. Where's Ed Koch's right to privacy? The guy's dead 10 years. Give him a break. That's my opinion. Now, I'll try to play devil's advocate, even though I strongly oppose what the Times did here, and say, look, through the prism of history, it helps to know the struggles that some people had at a time and helps you appreciate how different things are now when you can talk about being gay openly. It really makes you appreciate how Ed Koch might have struggled with different aspects, how lonely his leadership must have been. And that's basically the picture that the article paints, is that he was an incredibly lonely guy, even into his late 80s, and really just wanted a boyfriend to share his life with. Now, to me, I can't think of anything more disgusting, honestly, than trusting friends, trusting incredibly close friends with what you think is a secret, and then having them run to the New York Times, even after you're dead, and say, or any newspaper if you don't want it to be the New York Times, running to the New York Times or any newspaper after you're dead and outing all of your secrets. In my view, this is inexcusable. I find this incredibly offensive, and I have to think it's incredibly hurtful to Ed Koch's life and legacy. You know, I'm also reminded on some level of the Franklin Delano Roosevelt in Washington, D.C. Have you seen this monument? The Franklin Delano Roosevelt Monument in Washington, D.C. Have you seen it? Now, the reason it's controversial is because FDR is in a wheelchair in the statue. FDR took pains to avoid being seen in a wheelchair. Didn't want to be seen in a wheelchair. And a lot of folks questioned whether or not it was appropriate to have this out there. And basically, FDR wanted to be remembered as a great leader who got us through the Great Depression and World War II. He didn't want to be remembered as a great disabled leader. Ed Koch wanted to be remembered as the greatest 3-term mayor in New York City history. He didn't want to be remembered as a gay mayor. And I find this really a difficult pill to swallow. Do you disagree? And you're free to say whatever you like. 800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC. Let me begin with Stuart in Manhattan. Hello, Stuart.
Frank, as a conservative, I couldn't agree with you more. This breaks my heart. He closed the gay bathhouses. He had the wherewithal to do that. However, he never backed the police in controversial incidents like the Michael Stewart case and Eleanor Bumpers. So he has a mixed legacy. But to have his friends go out and do this now, and I'm talking as a conservative, this is disgusting. It's really disgusting. It breaks my heart.
Well, thank you, Stuart. Look, and I happen to like Ed Koch, both as a person, and I wouldn't say we were friends, but we were friendly. I was a great admirer of him, but we never socialized together or anything like that. although I got to meet him many times, and it was always a real treat to be able to meet him. But I say this as somebody that was an admirer of Ed Koch's mayoralty, flawed as it was. And look, Ed Koch's third term was not exactly a winning term for New York City or for him. I mean, I think if he had stopped after 2 terms, his legacy would have been, in many respects, in a much better place. But I don't care if this is a mayor that I didn't like. Abe Beam, for instance. Abe Beam, I don't consider a very good mayor. If they tried to run this same story about Abe Beam right now, I'd be saying the same thing. If they were doing the same thing about gentleman Jimmy Walker, I would be saying the same thing. I don't think this is appropriate at all. And I would say this if I liked Ed Koch or I didn't like Ed Koch, you name it. 800-848-WABC. I just have such a problem. And I said this when Katie Couric came out with her book and she trashed Larry King. I have such a problem with coming out with articles after people are dead that they can't respond to. It really rubs me the wrong way. It really does. 800-848-WABC. That's 800-848-9222. Dave is in Orange. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Frank. How are you? It's a right to privacy. They talk about it. They want it both ways.
All right, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, I think Ed Koch does have a right to privacy, in my view. Dara is in Saratoga. Hello, Dara.
Hi. I was a big fan of Mayor Koch, but I think from just a historical perspective that representation does matter. And even though in Mayor Koch's generation those things were discussed, and he stood on his record rather than his sexuality, and I'd like that. I think that that's probably his best thing. But he had this phrase, and I think of it often when he said, "You didn't vote for me, and now you must suffer." I think that's how he viewed his whole life. It's that he wanted to be judged by just what he produced. But he had the body of a Greek god and finger on the button.
I don't know that he had the body of a Greek god. I think we may have maybe I was going to say he had the body of a cheese blintz. That's about where I would say. And it's funny, we were talking about documentaries on Friday, and not even knowing this story was coming out this weekend, I recommended the documentary Koch, which is available on Netflix and a bunch of other streaming sources, and I continue to recommend that documentary. And they deal with Koch's sexuality in that documentary. And they don't make any definitive statements, but you hear from people that think he's gay, some people who thinks that, thought that he was asexual. Curtis Lewa, who did not have the best relationship with Koch when he was mayor, but then they became pretty friendly after Koch was no longer mayor, and Koch was a regular guest of Curtis's on the air. In fact, when Curtis and I started when we left WABC together in 2010, he asked me, who do you think should be the first guests? Who do you think should be the guests on the first show? And I said, I think it would be great if we could get Rudy Giuliani and Ed Koch. And both of them, to their credit, both did it. They were on Curtis's very first show on that other station. And, Curtis used to say of Ed Koch that he used to think that Ed Koch was so egocentric and narcissistic that he was in love with himself. And that was what his sexuality was. He was a self-sexual. I can't phrase it nearly as well as Curtis did. But my view is, who cares who he wanted to sleep with? I don't want to know what's going on in your bedroom. And you know what? The other thing is, and they cover this a little bit in the article too, Koch talked about why he didn't want to come out to his friends or quote unquote friends that are now outing him posthumously in this article. And basically, he didn't want every politician to have to be hounded about their sex life. And I agree. If you're running for office, I want to know what you're doing in terms of policy. I want to know what your track record is. I want to know what your vision is for the office that you're running for. And I want to know what kind of person you are. I don't care who you sleep with. And what this New York Times article does, in my view, keeping in mind what Dara said, is this gives permission to every media outlet in the country to ask, to hound anybody that runs for office going forward about what their sexuality is. Sometimes, I have friends and people will ask me, is this person gay? Is that person gay? My answer is always the same. I have no idea and I don't care. And unless they're trying to sleep with you, what do you care? I've never understood the obsession that people have with sexuality and other people's sexuality. I never have gotten it. I've never gotten it. A whole bunch of people emailing me over the weekend said, I can't believe what Curtis is saying about you. I can't believe what these callers are saying about you. Don't you get upset? Isn't Curtis your friend? The answer is, and I can't say this enough, and I feel like I say this literally every Monday, is no, I don't care at all. One, Curtis is giving us a lot of publicity by doing this. Two, Curtis's show does very well at night. It is the second highest rated show in terms of percentage on the whole station. I'll give you one guess as to what the number one highest rated show in terms of percentage is on the whole station, but that's neither here nor there. Three, sometimes Curtis can be very funny. Four, Curtis and I are very tight. So Curtis can say whatever he wants about me, and he's been such a good friend to me within radio that, as far as I'm concerned, even if he was sincere in making fun of me, which he's not, it wouldn't bother me in the least, because what he's done for me radio-wise, I owe him a great deal. I don't even know that I'd have a show but for him. So as far as I'm concerned, Curtis could say whatever he wants about me. It's funny. I used to ask Curtis the same thing about Steve Dunleavy. Steve Dunleavy was a great columnist for the New York Post. He was an anchor on The Current Affair. Could not stand Curtis towards the end of his life. He would refer to Curtis whenever I'd see Steve Dunleavy. And Steve Dunleavy and I were very good friends, frequent drinking partners, covered a lot of trials together, some other events. And he would refer to Curtis, and he would refer to Curtis as that nitwit in the beret that you work with. That's what he would call him. He always had this thick Australian accent. Steve Dunleavy, I must have seen him over the course of my life at least 100 times. I have never in my whole life seen Steve Dunleavy sober. And I don't think there's a person alive that has seen Steve Dunleavy sober. How he was able to write the way that he did, being bombed all the time, that's, to me, the most impressive aspect of Steve Dunleavy's legacy. But I would say to Curtis, don't you get upset that Steve Dunleavy says all these negative things about you? And Curtis would say, no. He says, because when Steve Dunleavy was the city editor of the New York, I think it was before he was with the Post. It might have even been the Daily. No, it was the Post. Okay. So it was the city editor of the Post. He said he did this huge article on us on the Guardian Angels, and that really caused us to take off. So as far as I'm concerned, whatever Steve Dunleavy says about me, he could say whatever he wants. I still owe him. That's the way I kind of feel about Curtis. All right. Now, this was a caller to Curtis's program on either Saturday or Sunday morning talking about Matt Blaze being asleep at the wheel.
Okay, real quick, Curtis. A little note on that. Last week you were talking about the guy borrowed your belt to go into the bathroom. Remember?
Yes, that's Matt.
Right.
Matt Blaze, who is the board operator and defender of Frank Morano. Yes, you're correct.
Right. Okay. Well, just something I think last Monday it was. A guy he takes a caller. Frank does, and he goes, I forget the name. Like Joe from Mississippi. And the guy goes, this is Joe, but I'm not from Mississippi. I don't know what's wrong with your guy. He sounds like he's asleep or something. I'm from Brooklyn. And so I guess you're not the only one. I mean, if the board operator now is like, I don't know, man. Does he have a problem or something?
First of all, I want to be very clear, and I'll let Matt Blaze speak for himself here. One, Matt Blaze doesn't answer the phones. Two, the person that was answering the phones that day that the caller said sounded asleep was Curtis's call screener, Avery Brooks. Avery Brooks was on loan to this program for 2 days, and by any objective measure, did a horrible job, right? I mean, and this is a very high-energy show. I have a lot of energy when I do the show. He almost put me to sleep on my own show because he's just so low energy. So make no mistake, that was not Matt Blaze that the caller was referencing, who he couldn't even manage to put up an accurate name for. That was Curtis's screener, Avery Brooks. Matt Blaze, do you have anything you want to add there?
That is 100% correct.
Thank you. And by the way, I don't consider you a big.
And I don't answer the phone.
Yes.
And it was Avery.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were referring to the day I wasn't here when Philip was on the board, or when I was here. Either way, both those 2 Mondays, Avery did answer the phone.
Interesting. Now, it is interesting, and I don't consider Matt Blaze a big Frank Morano defender. I find him to be, I don't know, a Frank Morano agnostic. That's the way I view him, but people have different views. All right, so we were talking about, they were talking about the joke segment we did on Friday, I think it was, or Thursday, where we invited people to call in with jokes, and at least one caller, Joe, took issue with that.
I was listening to when you were doing that little thing on the people saying the comedy jokes. I was the first person you played, Curtis, and the reason why my jokes were the way they were was Frank gave us rules and regulations on what type of jokes we could tell.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yes, if you would have listened, because he didn't want anybody to say anything anti-Semitic or anything like that, which I don't do. But, there was like all these criteria you had to go by.
So basically, he was censoring the contributors to his comedy hour.
Correct.
Wow.
Now, first of all, Joe and Ron Konkama is an interesting guy because he calls this show, acts like he's my best friend. Can't be nicer. Nice as can be. I hear him call Curtis, and all of a sudden, he's like Curtis's best friend. He almost takes this being servile to like a post-Carol level, which is very difficult. And then I remember when Frankie Russo used to be on the air, he'd call Frankie Russo and bash me. So it's like whoever's on, Joe will be your best friend. And second, did you hear Joe's characterization of the rules and regulations that I put on the joke segment? Yeah, let me hear that one again, if we can, Matt, just the beginning.
I was listening to when you were doing that little thing on the people saying the comedy jokes. I was the first person you played, Curtis. And the reason why my jokes were the way they were was Frank gave us rules and regulations on what type of jokes we could tell.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yes, if you would have listened, because he didn't want anybody to say anything anti-Semitic or
go
anything
figure.
like that.
Nothing anti-Semitic. But, my goodness. I may as well be the thought police. I'm not inviting these neo-Nazis who want to call in and bash Jews to talk about all these anti-Semitic jokes. Call me crazy. Again, who am I to censor the comedy of Joe from the Bronx and Richard in Parsippany? My goodness. How outrageous. Now, I did run into Curtis last week. He came to the Ferry Hawks game, and he was the one when my son was born. My son was born. He was 6.6 pounds 2 ounces, and Curtis started this rumor. I think that he was 13 pounds or 14 pounds or something like that. So when he saw my son Tuesday at the game, he said, "Oh, this kid's got to be like 36 pounds now." So he, I guess, referenced that at on the program this weekend.
Been at the Staten Island Ferry Hawks game opening night. Frank Morano eventually showed up. Frankie Five Boroughs from Staten Island with his lovely wife Rachel and Carmine, his new son, who was birthed in Thanksgiving Day, or approximately around then. I remember that. And it's amazing because he was so big, the kid, 13 pounds at birth. He had to be delivered by a midwife provided by Mount St. Laredo. Vinny Ignizio was in charge at the time. I had a midwife, nun, come over and assist Rachel along with Nurse Ratchet there, provided by the hospital. And I would have thought that they would have put El Jefe, big boy, Carmine on a diet. Nope, 36 pounds. And that reminds me, now that I saw Carmine the other day for the first time, because naturally I was not invited to the christening, I was not invited to the baptism. I still haven't been told why I'm suddenly persona non grata. But I wasn't invited. But thinking of Big Boy, how many of you remember Bob's Big Boy Restaurants? Or as that I think officially was known, Big Boy Restaurants. The reason why I mention that is when I saw young Carmine, he looked like that figure in front of the original Bob's Big Boy Restaurants, you know, that had that 6 rolls of fat protruding where his shirt and his pants meet. You remember Bob's Big Boy?
Now, he's given my poor son a complex. Now, thankfully, at only 5 months old, Carmine, who is not overweight, I don't think, even for a 5-year-old, at least not according to his pediatrician, can understand what Curtis is saying about him, but that did not stop Curtis from continuing to create this new narrative that my son is now 36 pounds.
Oh, we're going to talk about my night taking my wife Nancy to the Staten Island Ferry Hawks opening game in Staten Island, where I met Frank Morano, his lovely wife Rachel, and yes, the young Carmine, who might as well be called Big Boy El Jefe, because he is 36 pounds. Imagine, birthed on Thanksgiving to a midwife provided from Mount St. Laredo by Vinnie Ignizio, a 92-year-old nun, and Nurse Ratchet at Richmond Hospital. That boy, that bouncing big boy El Jefe, Carmine, is now 36 pounds. Maron Ama.
Curtis said so many inaccurate things there that I don't even know where to begin. Needless to say, my son was born in a hospital and was delivered by a doctor. And there is no Mount St. Laredo. There is no St. Laredo. So I don't know. There is a Mount Laredo, but my son, there's no facility there for birthing children currently, at least not that I'm aware. All right. Now, the thing about when Curtis decides to fire his verbal Gatling gun at those of us on this show, nobody is safe. Not even Philippe.
Frank Morano the other morning put his board operator, Felipe, or whatever the hell his name is, put him to sleep.
He's the farthest from genuine in the world, so.
Fair enough, Tuna. Thank you. 800-848-WABC. That's 800-848-9222. So far, I'm alone on this one. What about you, Philippe? If you were met a mayor that you didn't like their politics and they wanted to take a photo with you, would you want to take a photo with them, or would you run away? Philippe? Yeah, I guess you're not listening. All right. You guess you weren't listening to anything I just said. I didn't mean to throw you here, Philippe. Not exactly a trick question. Never mind. We're moving on. It's okay. Ned is in Stamford. Hello, Ned.
Fell asleep, Philippe. I got to acknowledge that was a pretty boring segment. Frank can do much better than that. I believe Avery was the phone screener at the time. You probably were putting toothpicks in your eyelids to stay awake. That was not scintillating talk radio the way I know that Frank Morano can do it. God.
Now, for starters, Avery looks like he's asleep, every single time that I've met him, number one. Number two, Philippe was not asleep, in his defense, and I'll let him speak for himself if he wants. He was just unable to turn his microphone on and speak into it. Now, you wonder, how does someone who can't manage the fact of turning their microphone on and speaking into it and getting on the air, how do they get tasked with running all of the controls for a 4-hour radio program that's number one in the market? That I don't know. That's a fair criticism. But Philippe's problem is not narcolepsy nor boredom. It's, at least in that particular instance, it's incompetence. It has nothing to do with falling asleep. it has everything to do with being unable to figure out how to turn on a microphone. And he was not snoring on air. That was a sound effect that was inserted by this Curtis Avery duo later on. Number two, if we did hear Philippe snoring on air, that would have been a nice change because that would have meant that he was able to actually figure out how to turn his microphone on and speak on air. But now that Matt Blaze is here in charge of the microphones, Philippe, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, Frank, I don't know if you were looking through the glass at the time of it, but what really happened was Avery snatched the button for the microphone off, and fisticuffs ensued, and I had to fight him for that button back. You heard me later in the show, and I don't know if you noticed that Avery also had a black eye. Both of those things are in a direct correlation.
Well, but that's because he's black.
Fair.
All right. Well, so okay, there you go. I will take back my commentary on your ability to turn on a microphone. That's fair. All right.
Hey, Frank, it's good to be here. You know, I'm amazed to be on WABC. I'm sitting here with the ghosts of Dan Ingram and Bob Grant and Don Imus, and it's almost hard to believe I'm here.
Well, hey, don't do anything to let their ghosts down while you're here. So tell folks, if they're not familiar with your website, which is a terrific website, what exactly is Forgotten New York?
Well, it began back in 1998 when I decided to start taking pictures all over town of, basically it's about infrastructure. It's about the things you see in the street, the lampposts, the mailboxes, and out-of-the-way neighborhoods, parks that don't get in the guidebooks. I decided to do a website and a book, later on a book, about the things that are not covered in all the New York City guidebooks, such as the cast iron lampposts that you see in the street, or the old mailboxes that were attached to telephone poles. And it gradually grew and extrapolated over the years into a little bit of an architecture site, a little bit of a New York City history site. I touch on all that, and I throw in a little bit of personal anecdotes along the way just to keep things light. So we started out in 1998. We did some photography all over New York City. And amazingly enough, the genesis of Forgotten New York, the website, also was the genesis of the TV show The Big Bang Theory. And I'll explain that to you. When Forgotten New York began, an idea in my head when I was sitting in my office at Publishers Clearinghouse, the direct mail giant in Port Washington. And they had an art director there. His name was Steve Milaro. Now, Steve Milaro and a couple of his friends had published a website way back in the Stone Age of
internet
websites, the internet, in the 1990s. They called it Stet Magazine. Stet? Stet, S-T-E-T. It's a printing term that means leave things the way they are. I've always been working in the print sphere. I've been a copywriter, a mechanical artist, a proofreader, and right now I'm working at a publisher called Marquis Who's Who. Steve, when he learned that I was going to do a website, Forgotten New York, I had sketched it out on a pad what I wanted to do with the categories and everything. He gave me a little bit of software called Adobe PageMill. And the first few pages, first year or two of Forgotten New York was composed on PageMill. To cut a long story short, Steve Milaro later left Publishers Clearinghouse. He moved to California. He got involved in the television industry. And for many years, he was what they call the showrunner for The Big Bang Theory.
One of the most popular shows on network television for a long time.
So, you know, Forgotten New York and Big Bang Theory are sort of twins in a way of
That's very
speaking.
funny. They're cousins. So what are the criteria for something that you might choose to feature on Forgotten New York, the website? You mentioned the old-fashioned mailboxes attached to telephone poles, the old-fashioned lampposts. Is it just something that used to be but generally no longer is? What are the criteria for inclusion?
It's something that points back to the past of New York City. I'll give you a little example. In Greenpoint, if you walk around Greenpoint in Brooklyn, the northern end of Brooklyn, if you look up at the corners of the buildings, and you can do this in Manhattan too, but I'm going to use Greenpoint as an example. the street names are carved into the buildings because that's how they identified streets long before they started posting street signs on lampposts and telephone poles and all that. Way back in the 1800s, they used to carve the names into the sides of the buildings. So, if you're unfamiliar with Greenpoint, I know many of the listeners are, the streets are arranged in alphabetical order from Ash, the A Street, down to Quay, the Quay, the Q Street. Well, some of the carved signs on the buildings have simply a letter, M Street, N Street, because that was the former naming scheme of the streets of Greenpoint. Instead of names in alphabetical order, they simply named them letters. There are also other buildings that have names, such as Clinton, Prospect, and that was the naming scheme even before that. So if you walk around the streets of New York City and you look up at the corner of the buildings and you see that there was a sign of the name of the street carved into the building, sometimes that name is not the current name of the street.
Oh,
it's
interesting.
The former name. That's how you can tell. That's a little bit of New York City history there.
That's pretty neat. We're talking with Kevin Walsh. If you want to check out his website, it's a terrific website. There's a lot of great content on there. You can just go to forgotten-ny.com. That's forgotten-ny.com. When did you start doing these tours?
Well, the tours started in June of 1999. Our first tour, we did Broadway. But I don't mean Broadway in Manhattan. I mean Broadway in Brooklyn. And we met on Kent Avenue and Broadway in Brooklyn. We walked almost the entire length of the street under the elevated train. I pointed out as we walked some old buildings. I give the history of the building, some ancient advertising signage. I pointed out where that was. That's what you get with a Forgotten New York tour. You're not going to get the usual obvious things that a lot of, I'm not putting them down.
No, of course, yeah.
A lot of the obvious things that...
Right, you're not taking people to the Empire State Building and things like that.
Although I do call the Empire State Building the king of all buildings on the website. That's how I refer to it.
Now, you mentioned advertising signage for products that may no longer be there. That's actually what prompted my interest in talking to you, and because we were taking calls from listeners about signs that they've encountered for products that are no longer there. And since then, people have been sending me images of different things that they're encountering. One person just last week sent me a John Lindsay sign.
That's at Flatbush.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
What are some examples of signage that's out and about in New York that people might find that for products that don't necessarily exist anymore?
Well, Frank, you're going to see these all over New York City. There's and it's beautiful typography on these signs. They are white signs with blue lettering in sans serif type. Rex Cole. Now, Rex Cole was a manufacturer of refrigerators, and his brand of refrigerators were produced in the 1930s. He had a tremendously large showroom in Bay Ridge at 4th Avenue and 64th Street. That building is still there, although it's been renovated so it doesn't look like it does in the old photos. But all over town, there were buildings in the 30s that purchased the Rex Cole brand of refrigerator, and they put the sign on the building outside, overlooking the sidewalk. And there, I was on a walk on 2nd Avenue just a couple of weeks ago at 6th Street, East 6th Street, where the old Fillmore used to be. Mm-hmm. It's there are two of them right there on the corner. But you can spot I've seen them in the Bronx. I've seen them in Brooklyn. I haven't seen them in Staten Island yet, but they're all over town. Another frequent painted sign, and this goes back to the 1800s, the late 1800s, is for Castoria. Do you remember commercials for Fletcher's Castoria when you were a kid on television?
Actually, I don't know that I do, actually.
There was a mild children's stomach remedy, and it was heavily, heavily advertised on buildings back from 1890 through 1920. And the guy who invented this stuff was Charles H. Fletcher, and he had this florid signature style, and it was on all the buildings. They also was the slogan, "Children cry for Fletcher's Castoria." No doubt the stuff was horrible tasting, but I think it's still available if you go to a drugstore that could point it out to you. But it's nowhere near as popular as it used to be.
Was that a lot more common as a means of advertising back then, painting the advertisement on buildings itself rather than having something like a billboard?
Well, you know why painted ads were so popular? It's because in Midtown Manhattan, there used to be elevated trains all over the place. On 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue, right here, used to be one. 2nd Avenue, 6th Avenue, 9th Avenue. And people would paint ads on the buildings so that people would see them on the trains going by.
Interesting. When did the elevated trains in Manhattan go away?
The 2nd Avenue L disappeared in 1940. The 3rd Avenue hung on for a while. It ended in 1955. And the Bronx section from the hub north to Gun Hill Road lasted until 1973.
Wow.
The 9th Avenue and the 6th Avenue L's were displaced by the IND subway, which began operations in the 1930s. The L's came down in anticipation of the IND opening.
A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were driving into Manhattan, and on the BQE approaching the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel, we saw this big sign for Bruno Trucking, which is no longer there. Now, something like that, why does no one take down the sign? Why do they leave up a sign for a defunct business? What's the sense in advertising a business that no longer exists?
Well, I think it's in that sign. I know where it is. It's on 2nd Avenue in Hamilton. It's pure inertia. You know,
who's going to do it?
That used to be a hotbed. That area, they call it Gowanus. There used to be all kinds of huge neon electric signs. One for Kentile Flooring, which no longer exists. That one lasted decades after Kentile went out of business. They just tore that down a couple of years ago. There was another one called Eagle Clothes. Eagle Clothes was a popular men's brand. There was a huge sign on 3rd Avenue and 6th Street in Park Slope. And these are all on the website. You can search them, and you can see what they look like.
How much research do you end up doing about the different infrastructure or the different advertisements or the different anything that you end up encountering? Do you end up doing a lot of homework assignments based on things that you discover?
Absolutely. I've had to buy an entire bookshelf to hold the books about New York City that I have purchased over the past quarter century. And I whenever a new book about New York comes out, I always buy it as long as it's as long as it has something to do with what I do.
So you've been at this for over 23 years now. What drives you? I mean, clearly this is a huge passion for you. What sparks your interest to the extent that you've dedicated more than 2 decades of your life to it?
I've often asked myself that. And the answer is, why do you like pizza? Why do you like chocolate ice cream? You can't really explain it.
Mm-hmm.
It tastes good to you. Well, I do it. I enjoy it. I've always had a fascination for it. The seeds were planted in 1962 when every lamppost in my neighborhood was replaced. They used to be these ornate cast iron lampposts that were colored. They're colored brown. They're shaped like bishop's crooks. You've seen them around.
Sure, absolutely.
You've seen new versions that have appeared. Well, I know where all the old ones are, and in the 1960s, there was a wholesale replacement, and I was 5 and 6 years old, and I remembered it. I knew it. And I had this fascination for lampposts. I know it. I know maybe it's. I don't know. I can't tell you why, but I used to fill tablets with drawings of lampposts.
Wow. One of the things that used to be ubiquitous in all 5 boroughs of New York, now it's sort of like an endangered species, is payphones, number one, and 2 is sort of the cousin of payphones, the phone booth. I can't tell you the last time I saw a phone booth. I don't know what Superman would do today if he needed to change real quick. Do you have any idea how many payphones are still out there?
Yeah, there are 3 proper phone booths that you enter and go into and dial a phone. There are 3 of them left. They're on West End Avenue on the west side. They're at 66th Street. I think another one a couple of blocks away in 69th, and there's another way uptown on 100th Street, or in the low hundreds. But if you go into private, or public places, you'll still see some booths. If you go to the New York Public Library, you'll still see some phone booths that you can go into and close the door, and they're still there.
Okay.
All right. Name a dinosaur.
Dino.
What's the first name of Donald Trump's current wife?
Melania.
What color is created by mixing the colors red and blue?
Green?
No, unfortunately, it's purple. Purple.
Purple?
Purple. Yeah, green would be blue and yellow.
Oh no.
But
See?
that's okay. That's okay. You're not colorblind, are you? You could play the colorblindness card. Are you colorblind? No. Okay. All right. We can't play the colorblindness. All right. Well, Allison, it's okay. It's okay. You still are the proud recipient of The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano T-shirt, which is pretty neat. I must say. I just ordered one myself.
Cool.
All right.
Oh, great.
So I'm gonna put you on hold. Fortunately, they're not purple, so you don't have to worry about trying to figure out how they came to be.
I better learn all the color things now. I feel terrible. I would have liked to have known what would be the next question.
All right. Well, hey, I'll put you on hold because I'm going to see if Marlena could have bested you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. You'll hear the rest of them. Okay. Now, you got all of them right, correct? Yeah. Okay. Well, put Marlena's mic on if you would. Yeah.
Yes. So, I got the first 3 right so far.
So there were 23 seconds on the clock. So we're going to see if you could. Now, you're not eligible to win the prize, but we're going to just see how well you would have done. Okay. 23 seconds on the clock. Who first discovered gravity? Just shout it out. Who first discovered gravity?
I don't want to play this game anymore.
Come on, the apple.
What's that?
The apple falling down from the tree?
I can't. Oh my God. Now I'm drawing a blank. See, when it's somebody else, I can answer these questions. All right, what's number 5?
Number 5? I mean, what country is directly to the south of the United States?
Seriously? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, South America.
No, that's a continent. It's Mexico.
Oh, yeah, right. That's what I meant.
Oh, this is not meant to be this difficult. So it was Sir Isaac Newton that discovered gravity.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes, I do know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I still want the other questions.
No, too bad. I'll give them to you off air. I'm not wasting questions on you. No, well, because I can use them tomorrow. If that means,
I see.
I'll give them to you off air. All right. Okay, that was
painful.
Painful for everybody. By the way, have you ordered?
I you know what? I have trivia phobia. I do. I can see why. I was on Double Dare when I was in 6th grade, and I lost. And ever since then, I mean, I think it's traumatized me for life that I just cannot answer questions on the spot that I could otherwise answer.
Yeah. Well, no, it is tough. It is tough.
Like I feel like I could beat Bernie if I wasn't.
On the radio.
Yeah,
or participating in the game.
Correct.
Right. If you had like a separate test, right? The two of you guys were taking tests.
Right.
Fair enough. I can see that. All right. A couple of things I want to ask you before we run out of time today. You, when you arrive here at the radio station, you not only text but email me that you're here.
Oh God, where is this going? Yes, that is correct.
But isn't there a phone number outside that says call such and such and alert them if you arrive off hours? I mean,
no,
there's not. Okay, all right. So I guess that's is what it is. Let me get your take on this real quick. By the way, where are you on the Elon Musk takeover of Twitter?
I'm fine with it. I couldn't care less who owns Twitter. I think all social media is just a cesspool anyway. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It'll be biased no matter what.
Are you someone that thinks, just so folks know where you're coming from, that the Jeffrey Epstein death was suspicious, or you think he just killed himself?
I think that he did not kill himself. I've always said that.
Do you think he was murdered?
I do.
Okay. Let me read you this tweet that Elon Musk sent out yesterday. Did you hear about this?
No.
Okay. So he has set the internet on fire with a cryptic tweet about dying under mysterious circumstances. This is what he tweeted. And I think it's just a joke, but it will be interesting if he ends up like the virus guy, who ended up dead, supposedly of suicide, after saying that it's not a suicide. This is what he said. If I die under mysterious circumstances, it's been nice knowing you. What do you think? Just a joke here, or is he really trying to, does he think that there might be forces out to
I think both. I think it's just a joke, and I do think that he thinks people are out to get him. He does have enemies. I mean, people have decided that they're not going to be on Twitter anymore because he's taking over. I'm pretty sure Bill Gates can't stand him, right? He completely mocked him. Did you see what he did?
I did. That was pretty funny.
That was really funny. Yeah, but I think he's joking.
You think he's joking?
I think he's absolutely joking. Yes.
But a lot of people were very frightened about that, and the internet's now abuzz about it. All right. So a year ago on Mother's Day, Elon Musk hosted Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live. One of the many actors over the years that has played Joe Biden has been Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Now, Jim Carrey is responding to a conspiracy theory that he's actually impersonating a dead Joe Biden. Now, I go along with a lot of conspiracy theories. This is one that I have a tough time with. That are they actually suggesting that they're doing a weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah,
basically,
well, this one woman is. So there was there's that duo, the Good Liars. You know who they are? They're like a comedy duo. So they kind of got popular during Occupy Wall Street, where they were like posing as, like the 1%ers or whatever. So then they started showing up at things, posing as whatever it is, a journalist or, whatever. Kind of like a Borat thing, right? And so anyway, they were doing an interview. One of them was doing an interview, Jason Selvig, and he was just interviewing civilians. And this woman did say that she's seriously saying that Biden is dead and that he is being impersonated by two actors, one of them being Jim Carrey, the other one being James Woods, and he actually had her repeat it, and she did not waver on that whatsoever.
So she's serious about it?
Yeah, dead serious.
Now, what sense does that make?
Literally dead serious.
James Woods is a Biden critic. Why would he go along with a conspiracy to fool the public on behalf of Biden?
Do you actually think that she thought this through thoroughly? I mean, you're asking a question that I'm sure she can't answer. Or she could answer in an even more silly way. But Jim Carrey, I love how Forbes really, built this story up.
Yeah.
All he said was, "Oh my," which, by the way, is the best response because it doesn't even need a response, because if you even try to explain it, then you're just playing into the stupidity, or I should say these people are limited. That would be the PC.
I think you were right on track the first time
version.
Hey, yesterday, as we mentioned, was Mother's Day. You celebrated with your daughters and your mom.
Yeah.
Are your daughters at a point where they're making you things, where your husband buys something from them for you, or do they have money? They go out and buy stuff. What do they do?
No, okay. My kids are 8 and 5. They're not going out and buying things. They're making things, and it's adorable. I love because the school actually takes over this role for all the kids, and so you get homemade cards and everything, okay. And then they do questionnaires for the little ones. And I actually posted when Rebel was 5, she said that I was 30,000 pounds. They asked how much does mom weigh?
I was
30,000.
You wear it well.
pounds. And she did say my favorite show was Bill Maher, which she was on point with that. But she also said my favorite store was CVS. And it was just the answers are so funny.
Right, funny.
So Harley gave one funny answer. The rest were just cute. But she said that they asked what my job was, and it was to clean the table.
At home?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's my job. That's what I do. That's my career. I clean the table. She's just so funny.
Well, everything is there very clean at your house. So I think you're doing a great job.
I should get a raise.
the Huffington Post had a list of some very unusual Mother's Day gifts.
Yeah, and and some of them are so goofy, and I'm going to point, there were 17 to be exact, but some of them weren't that interesting, but I pulled a few that were. Okay, so
let's hear about it.
But these are supposed to come from older children, adult children, because the first one was a flower vase bong, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bong that's shaped like a flower vase. This next one, I feel, should be listed under Father's Day gifts. It's a fart filtering underwear.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Well, I guess women can be equal opportunity flatulent as well.
Yeah, I guess.
But you're right. That is a traditionally male gift.
I think. Yeah. Burrito pop.
What is a burrito?
Exactly, and no one needs this. But it's if you're eating a burrito, it actually looks like a mug, but it's or one of those Yeti cups, and so you turn the bottom, and the burrito slowly comes up so that it stays together and you don't make a mess.
Oh, well, that's actually, I could see the value in that.
I could see you using
Me
that.
too.
Again,
Me
these
too,
are
actually.
Father's Day gifts. I mean, women don't have problems with burritos. They would just take a fork.
That's right.
All right. So this one is funny. It's a gold-plated macaroni necklace. So instead of the traditional macaroni, which is nostalgic, right? But then the gold, it's not unstable market.
Yes, absolutely.
I actually gave my mom some gold. I bought a little bit of gold and silver.
And you see the price. I gave my wife some gold on behalf of
Did she
her
mock
son.
you?
No.
My mother was mocking me.
Why was she mocking you?
Because she said, she's like, what am I going to do with it? Well, I'm like, first of all you keep saying is I don't want anything. I don't want anything, right? So I already gave her a bracelet at Christmas and another thing to go with that bracelet for her 70th. I'm like, so what? You don't want anything. I'm not going to buy you a handbag. Like, what am I going to buy you? Clothes? You're going to... It's not going to happen. So I'm like, I'll buy you something that has value, that doesn't take up a lot of space, and you'll have it. And she goes, yeah, I'm going to put it in a safety deposit box, and then it's going to become yours. And I'm like,
perfect.
Okay, great. So the value just went up that much more.
Absolutely.
I'm going to keep...
It's a hedge against inflation.
It is a hedge against inflation.
Absolutely.
But I was like, you know what? I was like, buckle up. There's more in the future. Because I am at a loss for what to buy my mother. And I certainly wouldn't get her a macaroni necklace.
A gold-plated macaroni necklace.
Either, yes. A jacket for your legs, which otherwise, wouldn't you just call those pants? But
you'd think so. But you know what? I like this because I feel like so often moms are cold.
Yeah, but it's usually up. It's usually not their legs.
Right.
It's usually like up top. They're cold. But this particular thing really is just a blanket that attaches around her legs, much like a burrito. It burritos mom's legs, so if she stands up to clap at your basketball or your football game,
I think these are some good ideas here.
Fall off. Okay, well, enjoy your gold-plated necklace. All right, this I had to Google and look at the video. A banana stuffer.
Banana stuffer.
Right. Yeah. So it's like it says if your mom is constantly struggling with stuffing bananas, do you know have you ever stuffed a banana?
No, what do you put in there? Chocolate syrup or something?
Yeah, I get, Nutella, I guess peanut butter, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how else you would, I would just cut up a banana and dip it, wouldn't you?
I would think so, yeah.
But no, behold, there's a device that it has a 4-step process of stuffing a banana.
I love this, actually. This is right up my kitchen is filled with devices that have these very narrow uses, and it drives Rachel crazy. She would hate this, but I would like this.
Oh, I would Marie Kondo.
I would use it once.
Marie Kondo all the way with this guy.
Yeah. You don't even want to know.
You need organizing. But anyway, those were the top picks of weird gifts that I would never want.
Speaking of Marie Kondo, I want to ask you about this story out of the UK. Evidently, I think it was the UK. A woman was mortified to learn the history of her couch. She was thrilled by her new Facebook Marketplace feature. That's like a virtual garage sale if people don't have Facebook. A circular sofa that appeared to be perfect for entertaining. Then she learned of its former purpose. What happened? What was so salacious?
So she gets on social media to showcase her new bargain sofa, which she got at a good price. Apparently, she only paid somewhere £500 because she's in the UK, and it was, has like a $3,000 value apparently. But apparently this was a couch used by swingers, and there were people responding on social media saying you really should get your couch cleaned. But I would think that if you were going to go and buy a used couch in any circumstance, you would have it cleaned anyway.
I would assume so, yeah.
It's a goofy story, but I think my biggest problem with this story was that the couch didn't even fit the space properly.
See, I knew you were going to have
it went wall to wall. Like, who wants a couch that touches both walls?
a different... That's true. That's true.